Cal found it on a Tuesday, in a folder that should not have existed. He worked in the basement archive of a building no one important visited, box after box of dead paper. He was 3 rows deep when he saw the dates. They were wrong. The insolvency filing was stamped with one date on the cover and another on the inner page, 41 days apart. He set the folder on the metal table and did not move for a moment. Then he photographed every page. He did it with the slow patience of a man who has been waiting most of his life for something small and exact. He had grown up hearing one version of the story and reading another in newspapers. His father had said the firm was stolen. The world had said the firm had failed. Cal had been 9 years old when the funeral happened and 12 when the last family asset was sold. He had carried his birth name like a stone in his pocket ever since. He never said it out loud. He used Cal because it was short and meant nothing. Tonight the stone in his pocket had weighed again. He put the folder back exactly where he had found it. He logged out of the terminal. He walked up 4 flights of concrete stairs because he did not want to be on camera in the lift. Outside, the city was loud and ordinary. He waited at the crossing. He did not cross when the light changed. He stood there and let the people move around him. Then he went home, and that night he made one phone call. The address Lena gave him was an apartment above a closed dry cleaner. She opened the door before he knocked. She was smaller than he remembered, the way old people get smaller. She looked at him for a long time and did not say his name. She made tea. She did not ask if he wanted any. The kettle was the loudest thing in the room. When she put the cup in front of him, her hands shook a little, but only a little. She said she had kept something for 30 years. She went to a wardrobe and pulled out a leather binder wrapped in 2 plastic bags. She set it on the table, the original ledger, the real one. The signatures on the last page were the ones that had been forged in the public version. Cal opened it and closed it again. He said he could not use this. Not yet. Not as himself. Lena nodded as if she had expected him to say that. She told him about a man named Mark Sater, mid-level hire at Voss Capital, recruited from overseas, accepting a sudden posting abroad next month before his biometric onboarding was complete. The window was 23 days. She had been watching for an opening like this for years. Cal did not ask how she knew. He drank the tea. It had gone cold. She said the door would not open twice. He said he understood. On his way out, she touched his sleeve. She said his father had been a careful man and a slow one. She said, "Do not be slow." He closed the door behind him gently. He spent the next 6 days unmaking himself. He did it in a small flat with the curtains drawn. He shredded his lease. He canceled 3 subscriptions and let 2 more lapse. He sold his laptop to a stranger for cash. He emptied the bank account in the name he had used for 15 years and moved the money in 3 steps no one would follow. He filed the paperwork for a legal name change through a service Lena had recommended, and he filed a second set under a different process to dissolve the old identity into a clean line on a clerk's screen. He went to a barber and asked for shorter. He bought 2 suits in colors he never wore. He stopped using his left hand for things people noticed because Mark Sater was right-handed and there was a photograph that proved it. On the 4th night, he stood in the bathroom and looked at his face in the mirror. He did not feel different. He did not feel anything. That was the part that surprised him. He had thought erasing his name would feel like dying. It felt like packing. He cut up the last document with his birth surname on it. He held the pieces in his palm and then dropped them in the sink and ran the water. He thought of his father for 1 second and then he stopped thinking of his father. There was a window of 23 days and now there were 17. He turned the light off. He went to bed. He slept 4 hours. The Voss Capital lobby smelled of cleaner and cold metal. The biometric gate accepted Mark Sater's iris on the 3rd try because the camera angle was off, not the iris. Cal walked through. He carried a leather case he had bought 2 days ago and worn it home until it stopped looking new. The lift was full of people who did not look at each other. On the 32nd floor, a woman with a tablet found his name and walked him to a desk. She said, "Welcome to the firm." He thanked her. His voice was lower than usual and slower. He had practiced this. The desk had a chair, a monitor, and a card with his login. He sat down. He did not look around for cameras because he already knew where they were. He opened the welcome packet. He read every word. At 11, a man came over and introduced himself as a team lead and asked how the flight had been. Cal said long. The man laughed. Cal laughed half a second after, the way someone tired would. At lunch, he ate alone in the cafeteria and listened. He learned 3 names by accident. He learned which 2 managers did not speak to each other. He learned where the smokers stood. By 4, he had answered 9 emails as Mark Sater, in a slightly clipped style he had studied from the man's old correspondence. At 5:30, he left with the others. Out on the pavement, he stood for 1 second longer than he needed to. Then he walked the wrong way deliberately, in case someone was watching, and looped back 2 blocks later. He met Voss on the 8th day in a corridor outside a meeting room. Voss was older than the photographs, white hair, very still hands. He stopped because someone introduced them, not because he wanted to. He looked at Cal the way a man looks at a tool he might use later. He asked one question about the overseas markets and listened to half the answer. Cal had rehearsed for a longer conversation. He cut himself off cleanly when he saw Voss was done. Voss said welcome aboard. He said it the same way he probably said it to everyone. He moved on. Cal stood in the corridor for 2 seconds. He did not let his face do anything. He had been 12 years old the last time he had seen Voss, in the back of a courtroom, and Voss had not seen him then. Voss had been a young executive in a good suit, signing papers with the same still hands. Cal walked back to his desk. He logged a meeting note in Mark Sater's brisk shorthand. He drank water from the cooler because his mouth was dry. A junior analyst near the printer looked up at him and then looked back down. He did not register her face. He should have. He thought, that is the only one I will need to be careful of, but he did not know yet which one it would be. He worked till 7. He left with a group of 3, talking about nothing. On the train home, he closed his eyes and did not sleep. By the end of the 3rd week, he had a chair at the table where decisions were rehearsed before they became decisions. It happened the way these things always happen. He was useful. He answered fast. He did not push. He brought up one good idea in a meeting and let an older man take credit for it, and the older man remembered. The older man brought him to a smaller meeting. The smaller meeting brought him to a corner office on the 38th floor, where a woman named Hale ran the financial archives. She liked him because he did not waste her time. She gave him a key card with restricted access. She told him not to abuse it, and he said he would not. He used it that night. The restricted archive was 3 rooms behind a door that needed 2 badges. He had 1 badge and a borrowed second one he had palmed off a desk and would return before morning. The room was cold. The shelves went up to the ceiling. He worked by the light of his phone. He did not photograph anything yet. He was learning the shape of the system, where the false files were kept and where the real ones might still be. He found a code on a binder spine that matched a code in the original ledger. His hands were steady. He had thought they would not be. He left the room at 3 in the morning. He returned the borrowed badge to the desk it came from. He went home. He slept 5 hours. It was the longest he had slept since he started. He went back on a Friday night when the floor was empty. He had narrowed it to 1 shelf. He pulled the binder. The cover said something neutral, a project name from 30 years ago. Inside were the originals, the original insolvency filing with the real signatures. The real cash flow statements showing the firm had been solvent, the internal memo from a junior lawyer flagging the discrepancy, and the second memo from a senior partner saying the matter had been resolved. The dates on the second memo were 30 days after the first. The signature on the second memo was Voss. Voss had been 34 years old. Cal stood in the cold room and read the memo twice. Then he photographed every page with his personal phone, which was not connected to anything Voss Capital owned. He photographed the spine of the binder. He photographed the shelf. He put the binder back exactly. He left the way he had come. He walked 6 blocks in the wrong direction before getting on a train. At home, he uploaded the photographs to a drive Lena had set up under a name that did not exist. He did not call her. He sat at the kitchen table for an hour with the lights off. He thought of his father once, briefly, and then he did the dishes from 2 days ago because he needed his hands to do something. He went to bed at 4. He did not sleep. At 7, he got up and went to work. He started moving them against each other in small ways. A line in an email forwarded to the wrong person on purpose. A piece of information given to one board member that made another look uninformed in a meeting. He never raised his voice. He never argued. He let other people argue and watched what they did with the silence afterwards. He pulled a small alliance apart in 9 days by feeding each side one true thing they did not want the other to know. He was good at it. He found that he was very good at it. No one noticed him the way you notice a draft in a building you thought was sealed. She was a junior analyst, 2 years out of school, sharp in the way people were before they got tired. She was reviewing onboarding files for compliance and found that Mark Sater had 3 different signatures across 3 different forms. They were not very different, but they were different. She did not report it. She started watching him instead. She watched the way he held a coffee cup. She watched the way he did not look at the windows when he passed them. She watched the way he said his own name when he answered the phone, which was a fraction of a second too long, the way someone repeats a word they are still getting used to. She did not say anything. She sat at her desk and did her work and watched. He noticed her noticing on the 11th day. He did not change anything he was doing. He thought, careful, and went back to his screen. The gala was on the 40th floor, glass on 3 sides. The city below was small and bright. Cal arrived alone in a suit Lena had told him to buy. He shook hands. He laughed at one joke and made a second one of his own. He stood near Voss for 90 seconds and said nothing of consequence. He drifted. He let himself be seen by the right people. He stood by the window for a moment because he had read that Mark Sater liked heights. Noah came to him near the bar. She was holding a glass she was not drinking from. She asked him about a place he had supposedly worked 4 years ago in a city he had memorized the streets of. She did not ask the obvious questions. She asked one specific thing. She asked the name of the cafe across the road from the office. He had not memorized that. There had been no reason to. He waited half a second. He said he had not gone to cafes much in those years. He said he had been working too hard to notice. He said it the way someone tired and middle-aged would say it, with a small, self-deprecating laugh at the end. Noah watched him do it. She did not smile. She said sure, and she walked away. He stood by the bar for a while longer. He did not drink. Across the room, Voss was telling a story to 3 people who were laughing. Cal watched the laughter and noted who started it and who finished it, and which of them looked at Voss when they thought he could not see. He did it on a Sunday, from a borrowed laptop in a cafe 2 cities away, on a connection that bounced through 4 other places before it touched anything real. He sent the financial data to 2 journalists who covered corporate fraud and 1 analyst at a regulatory body who had been quietly looking at firms like Voss for years. He did not include the original ledger. Not yet. He sent the falsified filings and the discrepancies and a clean diagram showing how the numbers had moved. He used the kind of dry, factual language that made the documents look like they had come from inside the firm. He signed nothing. He waited 2 days. On Tuesday morning, the first article was online before the markets opened. By 10, the stock was down 4%. By noon, the regulatory body had announced a preliminary inquiry. The phones on his floor did not stop ringing. People stood in clusters and then dispersed when a senior person walked past. Voss was in his office with the door closed. Cal sat at his desk and worked on his actual assigned tasks. He answered his emails. He went to a meeting and contributed nothing remarkable. At 3, a man from compliance walked through the floor and Cal did not look up. At 5, he went to the cafeteria and bought a coffee he did not want. He carried it back to his desk. He sipped it. It was bad. He kept sipping. He left at 6:30 with 2 other people, talking about traffic. By the end of the week, the leak had a shape. They knew it had come from inside. They did not know who. Cal was interviewed twice. He was calm. He answered every question. He volunteered one small piece of information that made him look helpful and gave them a thread that led nowhere. He came back to his desk and sat down and got back to work. On the second interview he mentioned, casually, a meeting he had walked past in which a board member named Renner had been speaking with an outside consultant about something that did not match what Renner had reported. He said he had not thought anything of it at the time. The investigator wrote it down. By Monday, Renner was the focus. By Wednesday, Renner had been put on leave. Renner was not innocent of much, but he was innocent of this. Noah watched it happen. She watched Cal walk past Renner's empty office and not look in. She watched him eat lunch with the same 2 people he always ate lunch with. She caught him alone at the printer on Thursday. She did not ask him directly. She said one sentence. She said, "You are very careful with your hands." He looked at her. He said, "Excuse me." She said, "When you talk, you hold them very still." Mark did not. I have seen the videos. He took his pages from the printer. He said nothing. He walked back to his desk. He did not look behind him. She did not follow. The shareholder meeting was on a Thursday. The hall was full. Cal sat in the second row in the seat Mark Sater had been assigned. He wore the same suit as the gala. He had the binder under his chair, in a leather case that did not draw the eye. He waited through 3 presentations. He waited through the chairman's opening remarks. He waited until the floor was open to senior staff for any matters of governance. He stood. He said his name was Mark Sater. He said he had found a discrepancy in the firm's historical filings that the board needed to be aware of immediately and on the record. The room shifted. He walked to the front. He did not look at Voss. He opened the case. He laid the original ledger on the lectern. He showed the photographs of the falsified filing alongside the original. He read the dates aloud. He read the memo by the junior lawyer. He read the second memo signed by Voss. He let the silence sit. Then he said one more thing. He said he was not Mark Sater. He said his name. He said it slowly, the full name, the one he had not spoken in 19 years. He said he was the son of the man whose firm had been taken. He said he had come into this building under a borrowed name because he had no other way in. The hall did not move. Voss was on his feet. A lawyer near the front was already speaking into a phone. Cal stepped down from the lectern. He sat in the second row. He folded his hands. It happened faster than he had thought it would. The regulatory body already had the preliminary file. The new evidence was admissible because the chain of custody was clean. By the end of the week, Voss had been suspended pending investigation. By the end of the month, the firm was placed in receivership. The receivers took the books. They took the building. They did not take the people. Cal went to one meeting with the receivers as a witness, not as a claimant. He answered every question they asked and offered nothing they did not ask. He gave them the original ledger. He gave them the access logs from the night he had photographed it. He told them he had broken into a restricted archive and he was prepared to face the consequences of that. The lead receiver looked at him for a long time. She said she would note it. She did not press. He had a list. He had spent 2 weeks making it. The names of every employee the original firm had had in its last year. The pension holders whose funds had been folded into Voss Capital and then quietly redirected. He gave the list to the receivers and to the regulatory body. He asked them to prioritize restitution to those names before any other claim was settled. He did not ask for himself. He did not put his own name on the list. The lead receiver asked if he wanted to be informed when the payments went out. He said no. He said he trusted them to do it. He left the building. He did not look up at it. He went to see Lena on a Sunday. The dry cleaner was still closed. The stairs were still narrow. She opened the door before he knocked, the same as the first time. She was smaller again. She made tea. He drank it while it was hot this time. He set the leather binder on her table. He said it belonged with her. She said it belonged with him. He shook his head. He said he did not want it in his house. She looked at him for a while. She did not argue. She put the binder back in the wardrobe in the same plastic bags. When she sat down again, she asked what he was going to do. He said he did not know yet. He said he had a small amount of money in the name he was using now, and that name was his to keep. He said he might leave the city for a while. She nodded. She did not ask him to stay. On his way out, he stopped at the door. He turned back. He walked over to her and bent down and kissed her once on the top of her head. He had not done that to anyone in 19 years. She did not look up. She put her hand on his hand for a moment and then she let go. He went down the stairs. Outside, the street was wet from a rain he had not noticed. He walked to the corner. He waited at the crossing. This time, when the light changed, he crossed.